I was wondering if you have any advice on how to make RMDs with maximum tax savings. Also, how to reinvest them. Love the book. Thanks from an old timer.
So, okay, for those of you that don't know, we get so excited about saving for retirement. And we have a lot of accounts where the government says, hey, if you save into this retirement account, we'll give you a break on your taxes. And so we max out our 401ks and we put money in IRAs, and we love seeing the tax deferred growth happen. And that's amazing until we get into our 70s. And then at some point, depending on your age, between age 73 and 75, the government says, okay, you've ridden this ride long enough. It's time for you to start taking money out of these accounts. And so you begin to get hit with required minimum distributions. The government says, hey, based on the value of your pre-tax accounts at the end of last year and applying an appropriate mortality factor related to how old you are this year, we're going to make sure you pull out a minimum amount out of your accounts in this following year. Well, what ends up happening is maybe you're someone who's living off of Social Security and you have a pension and you've done good saving. You're like, I don't need to pull money out of my 401k. I don't want to pull money out of my IRA. Well, you don't get a choice. And so what ends up happening is you kind of have this, I say tax bomb. You have this tax bomb that happens. All of a sudden your income shoots way high up and you lose some control over it. So the question Lo is asking is, hey, are there strategies that I can begin to deploy that would help drive down the taxes of the RMDs? I'll speak to one. There's just a great opportunity that a lot of people don't know about. And then I think, Brian, it'd be interesting to talk too about maybe some preemptive planning you could do. But the one that I came up with, when it comes to RMDs, one of the great things that you can do, if you are someone who is charitably minded, we know that with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from a few years ago, standard deduction increased. And so a lot of people aren't able to deduct charitable giving anymore because the standard deduction is so high. Well, if you're someone who is in the RMD phase, one of the things you can do is you can do a qualified charitable distribution where instead of you receiving your RMD, you can actually opt to give it directly to a charity of your choice. So if you have an RMD happening this year and it's going to be $20,000, but you want to choose for $5,000 of that to go to your church or go to a charity, go to an organization you support, you can give that money directly from your IRA to the charitable organization. And then on your tax return, you would only show $15,000 of income from your total RMD of 20. So it's an amazing way to remove income from your tax return and not get taxed on that. That's the one that I came up with.
Yeah, and the reason a lot of you are like, well, why would you do that if you don't get a tax deduction because the standard deduction is so high? Is because you guys, once you're retired, you'll quickly realize Social Security taxability does matter because maybe you're right on that threshold of where 50% or maybe none of it's taxable, and now you're trying to keep it from being 85% taxable, and that might even be changing with tax code that's coming in 2025. Also, IRMA Medicare premiums, your income does impact what your Medicare premiums are, so a lot of people will use the QCDs to help that. And there is even a weird quirky thing in the tax code right now is because a lot of RMD age is now 75, but QCDs can start at 70.
70 and a half.
So
right.
70 and a half. So, because that's the old RMD date. So there's a little arbitrage situation there. What Bo he added something there that I think is an important thing because there are a lot of people who are probably, maybe you're in you've left the earned income workforce, meaning you're not in your peak earning years anymore. So your earned income on your tax returns is going way down. Whereas when you were working, you were in the highest of tax brackets. But now that you've retired, you're in a much lower tax bracket. Don't sleep on Roth conversions because we find all the time is that like if you retire at 60, yeah, and RMDs don't kick in for you until you're 75. You've got 15 years to see if there's a tax arbitrage opportunity to where maybe now you're in this super low tax bracket. Should you be maximizing that 12% tax bracket, or maybe even should be maximizing the 22% tax bracket? You really need to go forecast how big are those RMDs. And for some of you, you have multiple seven figures in these retirement accounts. And once they fire up, you're going to be like, man, it's great. I'm paying no taxes. It's awesome. And then all of a sudden, whoa, I have a $200,000, $250,000 required distribution. That's going to be pretty taxable. So don't sleep on that 15 years. Make sure you're taking a proactive stance on looking at tax policy, looking at tax rates, and seeing if there's an arbitrage for you. But do be aware. This is where I tell you, complexity will find you. I tell you to do this, but then what you're going to do your tax. You're going to do this based upon tax rates only, and then you go do your taxes, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just screwed up my Social Security. Oh my gosh, I just screwed up my Medicare premiums. This is why I think as financial advisors, people love us, is because we help you herd the cats. We kind of think about all the things you don't realize. Even though I just gave you the list of a lot of things to think about, you still go realize there's a lot of wrangling that goes into making sure we're planning this well. And then you had asked, and I'll close out the loop on this. You said, how do I grow these distributions? It's not uncommon for when you're reinvesting that you just link your taxable account to these. You have to pay the man his portion for taxes, and don't forget to take into account where you live statewise matters. Some states don't tax retirement assets that heavily. They actually give you huge exemptions. Like I know Georgia. I was working on something for another state last week, and I was like, man, they don't tax Social Security or retirement contribution, or retirement distribution. So pay attention to your state taxes as well when you're thinking about the reinvesting, but then you just let it kind of grow up in that after-tax account and just try to be proactive. Don't let it just sit in cash. Actually think about it in conjunction with your whole plan to make sure you know what the why is for those new assets after you distribute them out.
That's great.